lovely and darling viewers, it's Jen here at Check Her Joy. This time I'm reviewing the Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. This is a French episodic revenge story. It's a bit of an adventure story also, and it centers around Edmond Dantès, who is arrested for a crime he didn't commit, spends 14 years in prison, and then when he escapes, he seeks his revenge on all the people who are responsible for putting him there. It's a pretty long book. It's roughly 1,000 pages. Some people's editions I've seen have been like 1,200, 1,400 pages. It's 117 chapters, and I listened to the audiobook for this, which is from Blackstone Audio and read by John Lee, and I do not know who the translator is on either the audiobook or the physical copy that I own. Sorry? I don't know why they're not listed. The audiobook was 47 hours long, so still pretty lengthy, but at least I got to kind of do other stuff while I was trying to get through it. The size of this book, I'm not going to lie, freaked me out, which is why I went with the audiobook. It's actually a really engaging, really interesting story. It was released in episodes in serial format, so one chapter like a week or something, whatever the publication schedule of this newspaper was. I probably should have looked that up. But it was written around the 1840s. And basically it's like a television show where each chapter is one episode of a show, or each one's one comic in a series, to tell like the whole story. So the story follows Edmond Dantès, who is this really optimistic, really naive, really sweet, really like good kid. He's 19 years old. He is a really good sailor and pretty good at leadership. Everybody loves him. The crew just adores him. Well, everyone except one guy we're going to get back to. But Edmund is about to be promoted to captain of the ship. And to do it at 19 is super impressive, and like, he did not expect this, but he is totally grateful because it means that he has enough money that he gets to marry the love of his life, Mercedes, who has been his like childhood sweetheart. So they're finally about to tie the knot, and he is just, like, over the moon and excited. We've also got Edmund's dad, who they have this great relationship, and they're really supportive of each other, and everything looks awesome. Except there are some people who are jealous of Edmund and his good luck and fortune and things that he has. So one of them is Danglars, who works on the ship that Edmund is getting promoted on, and he thinks that he should have been promoted instead. He's been there longer. He's put more work into it. You know, he's older. He's just a better leader. He's better at keeping the finances. So he really thinks he should be the captain. So he hatches this plot, get Edmund arrested. And so there's actually this admirer of Mercedes who would love to marry her, named Fernand. And he and Mercedes are like great friends, but like she has friend-zoned him. And he's like, maybe if I get rid of Edmund, I could marry her instead. So he agrees to help Danglars. And so does Caravus, who is actually, I think their next-door neighbor. Edmund and his father's next-door neighbor. Who is jealous of Edmund's good fortune and money, and he's constantly trying to come up with ways to get money from the dad, who's older and, like, not physically able to go do things on his own. So he's relying on neighbors to, like, help. And Caravus is definitely taking advantage of this. He's, like, taking all the money that Edmund is sending to the dad for himself. So these three guys plot together to get Edmund arrested. They send a note to the police, basically telling lies. Edmund is immediately arrested on the day of his wedding feast. Not the actual wedding day, but, like, a rehearsal dinner, engagement dinner kind of thing. Like a pre-wedding party. But, like, in the midst of, hey, I'm getting married and everything, and this is so awesome, we're about to announce my promotion, that's when he gets arrested. Dragged out of there, thrown in jail. He doesn't know what's happening. He's not allowed to talk to anybody. He doesn't know what crime he supposedly committed. There's no trial. He just goes from there to like, a judge. That judge is Villefort. And Villefort, his dad, is actually a Bonapartist, so he supports Napoleon Bonaparte, who has been captured and sent into exile on the Isle of Elba, and actually, coincidentally, Edmund was just at the Isle of Elba, and he has this letter he's supposed to deliver to Paris, and when Villefort opens the letter, he's like, this is a letter from Napoleon to my father? And that's not something I want people to know about, or for my dad to be helping Napoleon. So he destroys the evidence and just throws Dantès in jail. Like, you're gone, goodbye, you are going to rot in jail for the rest of your life. Edmond doesn't even know what the letter was that he was supposed to be delivering, so he's completely shocked, has no idea, and he ends up spending 14 years locked in prison. He keeps trying to insist on his innocence. The guards aren't having it. They're like, nobody is completely innocent here. So he gets thrown into, like, the maximum security cells, basically, in the basement where there's only one other inmate. He's completely isolated from everybody. He's basically the worst treatment you can get in this prison. That's what Edmond is getting for 14 years. And his only friend is the person in the cell next to him, who he does get to know. And this friend is the Abbé Ferrer, who was a teacher and a tutor in his life before being sent to prison. And he teaches Edmond all these things about the world. He teaches him languages, and about art, and about politics, and about human nature. And so when Edmond finally does escape prison, he comes out as somebody who is much more worldly, someone who's much more knowledgeable, and definitely has lost his naivete about the world. He knows how rough it can be. He's lost everything. So basically, when he gets out of prison, a couple things happen. First of all, the Abbé told him about this treasure on the island of Monte Cristo, which is where Dantès ends up first. He digs up the treasure, and it's there. So he's set for life. He's got tons of money. He is so incredibly rich. He has got like a king's ransom, basically. And he uses this to set himself up nicely. And rather than just go and enjoy his life and everything that the world can offer you when you're rich, he actually starts plotting his revenge on the people who put him into jail. So we see him trying to figure out what happened, who was responsible, what their part was. Some of the people were actually trying to help him and get him released from prison, like his old boss, Morel, who was the owner of the ship he was going to be captain of. So Dantès helps Morel out, and then after he's done rewarding people, then he goes after the 4 who are responsible for him being in prison and destroying his life. And that's a pretty big chunk of this book. They're really long, really intricate plots, and there's also this shift in storytelling. So for the first part of the book, we're told everything from Dantès' perspective. We know everything Dantès knows. Once Dantès gets out of prison, there's like this gap of time, like I think it's 10 years or something, where we don't know where he's been, and he pops up and we're seeing him from other people's perspectives. And so the rest of the book is not from Dantès' perspective, but from the perspective of the other people that he encounters. And he appears again as this mysterious figure, the Count of Monte Cristo. And everybody's like, what is his past? What is his story? Why does he have so much money? Why does he know so much culture and everything? And they're just completely enthralled with him. He's so interesting. And he's so charming and so delightful. And so everybody's just drawn to him. And that's really how he gets into people's lives and, like, destroys them. Each of the people that have wronged him also have secrets and other things that they've done. Because, like, they didn't just do one bad thing to Dantès. They went on to do other bad things to other people. And really, those are the things that go back to bite them in the ass. I mean, yes, Dantès is the one pushing those things into the forefront and into the light, discovering their secrets and everything, but ultimately their downfalls are based on the fact that Dantès isn't the only one that they wronged. There's a multi-generational aspect to this story. I mean, we kind of see it in Dantès' dad and him and their relationship, and also Villefort and his dad, but it's really more like we have Dantès' generation and the people who wronged him, and then they have their kids. And most of the story, at least the part that I related to, were the stories that came from the kids' perspective. One thing that kind of bugged me about this book is at the very beginning there aren't a ton of well-developed female characters. Even Mercedes isn't that well-developed at the beginning of the book. By the end of the book, she's definitely had a character arc, and we definitely get to know her, and we get to know Villefort's daughter, and Danglars' daughter, and this other girl, Haddé, who ends up in the Count of Monte Cristo's care. Like, we get to know these women very well, and they are pretty much kick-ass women by the end of the book, but at the beginning, it feels lacking. It feels very male-dominated. with Mercedes being the only woman and her being very passive in this story at that point. So it takes a while to introduce some strong female characters. I was actually surprised about diversity, though, and, like, it's France in the 1800s. They're mostly white, but some of the people, especially, like, Dantès' servants, are black or Middle Eastern and stuff, so there's actually more diversity than I thought there would be. I also really liked one of the female characters who ends up not wanting to get married and wants to buck the social trend and go be an artist, which I adored. I loved. I did not expect that to even be a thing that would be happening in this book at that time. That you would have a woman who's like, no, I don't want to get married. No thanks. I'm fine. I don't even want to be in society. I just want to go do art. I just want to do my thing that makes me happy. And I loved it so much. So, throughout this book, there are a lot of themes. A big one is justice and what's good and what's bad. What makes somebody a good person, what makes somebody a bad person. The whole revenge thing. When does Dantès go too far? There's a point in the book where even Dantès goes, oh crap, I might be taking this too far. I thought I was doing God's will, but maybe, maybe it's just me being mean at this point. So, justice, good versus evil. There's a political aspect to this. There are people who align themselves with Napoleon and people who align themselves with the king. This is particularly more important when Dantès is younger and while he's in jail, because Napoleon comes back and tries to take over France again before his final fall at Waterloo. So there's this historical aspect to it, and all the politics involved in that, and who's a Bonapartist and who's a royalist. There are themes about faith and about God and whether or not God exists or what role he plays. There's also, like, the social structures. Most of these people, by the end of the book, are living in the high society, but at the beginning of the book, we see Dantès and Mercedes, who are very much, in the poorer society. So we see that social aspect. There's a lot of social commentary on the rich and how they spend their money and their time, especially towards the middle of the book, where we kind of see Dantès re-entering society as this rich gentleman, how people gossip and talk about him, but also, like, they're hanging out at the opera, not to watch the opera, but to be seen by other people, and so they can have conversations in their private boxes, and just spending money on these really expensive tickets because it's like, hey, I've got money to burn. There's definitely some stories about marriage and about love, and some of these characters married for love, some of them married for money. There are some romantic subplots throughout here. There's Dantès and Mercedes. There is also, like, the kids have all their marriages. So, like, the older generation is trying to marry off all the kids for the best social and monetary advantages. And some of the kids are like, but I also love this other person. So we have these romantic subplots as they try to sort out who they're going to marry and end up with and what their lives are going to be like. There's also this idea of whether or not the children should be accountable for their parents' sins. So in French society, it's a matter of honor to defend your family. So, like, the parents, as their crimes and their villainy starts being exposed, the kids have to deal with that and whether or not they're going to defend their families or whether or not they're going to stay in society once everything falls apart and how are they going to move forward. So, like, the parents' sins definitely have impacts on the kids. There's also a question about Dantès' what he's doing, because he doesn't just attack these 4 men. It involves their entire families, and especially the kids had nothing to do with this. They have women that they married after they did this stuff, who, like, were not involved in this at all. And so it impacts everyone because of that, and also some other people. So Dantès' revenge isn't just on these guys, and that's when I think it starts, at least for me, when it starts crossing the line. So it is a really interesting, really fascinating book. Dantès is an interesting character because you see him first from his perspective, and then later we're seeing other people. So we kind of know him, but also we don't know everything that he's doing. We don't know where he's going with every plot. We don't know how much he knows about everything. Does he know every secret? So he's this mysterious character, but he's also like the center of this book still at all parts, even when he's not the one telling it. He's still like the Count of Monte Cristo is looming larger than everything else in this book. My favorites in here were Eugenie, the girl who wants to go be an artist. I also really love Valentine, who is Villefort's daughter, who is like the sweetest thing ever. I think she's like a Disney princess, basically. She is wonderful to everybody, but like everything is plotting against her just because of her dad and her money. And I also really liked Morel's children, Maximilian and Julie. They're also sweeties, so those were kind of the highlights of the book for me. It's really interesting to try to figure out where the plots are and to see where they're going. I also, while reading this, I couldn't help but see similarities to other stories that I knew really, really well. Like, there are similarities to Hamlet, if you're looking for it, or to, like, fairy tales and, like, Snow White and Sleeping Beauty I saw similarities for. So I was seeing other things in it. Like, my brain, especially towards the end, like, really just clasped onto the story and what was happening and was really just engaged with it. I tried to read other books towards the end, and I was, like, trying to approach everything as, like, it cannot be that simple. Like, I had to have millions more layers. So that was getting interesting. At a certain point, I was like, I'm just reading this. I can't handle reading anything else. Normally, I read, like, 3 books at a time. This was like, no, this is it. 1 book. For the most part, I really enjoyed this. The middle part kind of lags a bit when we don't really know what's happening. Because we're just randomly introduced to a new character, and we're like, who is this, and where is Dantès, and what's happening? But by the end of the book, it's all so intricately drawn in that I'm like, okay. And then the very, very last thing Dantès does on the very, very last page, I did not agree with his decision there. But I don't want to spoil it for you guys. Just say the ending, where Dantès is going next, is not something that I agree with. It's not where I think he should be going. So there's my review for The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. Let me know in the comments below if you've read this book, what you thought of it, what struck you, what themes did you see, what was your favorite character, have you read the unabridged version or one of the abridged versions? I kind of want to know what the differences are, like what parts get cut when it gets abridged, because every part of this seems so intricately woven that I'm like, what? You have to lose something? And it's like, how do you get it smaller than this? For the most part, I liked the fact that each of these people get their revenge for something else that they did. And their revenge, like, what happens to them is pretty poetic and apt to the things that they were doing. Peace out. I love you guys, and keep reading. Bye.